Okay, so in this video I'm going to show you how to prepare a 3D scanned model on the laser scanner so that it's suitable for import into Unity, like this one we've got here. And you can see that it's got quite a lot of textured detail from the transferred normal maps, and it's also got a texture. The mesh itself is actually very reduced because I'm using a cloth material for the mesh, so I want it to so it needs to be quite low resolution for the computer to be able to calculate all the cloth components of it. Here is a blank scene in Maya, and what I'm going to do is just import a 3D scanned OBJ file straight from the laser scanner by dragging it into the scene. And it will take a little while to calculate because there's a lot of information in the laser scanned files, and a lot of that information is quite messy, and you need to clean it up a bit so that it's suitable to work with. We're going to move between Maya and ZBrush to do that. So this is the raw scan. And you can see that it's very, very detailed, and it's also quite bumpy, which is an effect of where all the different laser dots hit the object, and it tries to kind of make up what's between them, so that it does get this kind of bumpy look, which we can fix in ZBrush quite easily. But you can see it's got like 10 million vertices, which is heaps. What we want to do is just go to object mode, and what's going on here? Object mode. Just select that. Don't know why it's going white, it's unusual. But we're going to first of all do a merge of the vertices. So what's an issue here is that if you go to the face select and you select a single face on the object, and if I pull it up, you'll see that it's not actually attached to the other faces. So the first thing we'll do is a merge on all of the faces so that they're joined together. So edit mesh, merge, like that, and it'll take a second to calculate. A lot of the actions that we perform on these models takes a little bit of time due to the amount of detail, and the reason we're going to move to ZBrush to do the remeshing, the retopologizing, is that Maya is it doesn't handle the high density meshes as well, whereas ZBrush uses a 2.5D kind of algorithm to make it a lot more efficient in the processor. So those vertices are all merged now. We can go back to object mode, and I'm just going to delete the history from that action before I keep going. It's always a best practice to continually clear your history so that different inputs into the data structure of the model aren't conflicting with each other. Delete all by type history. Okay. The next cleanup operation I'm going to do is find all the bits on the mesh that are kind of like this bit here where they're not connected, and also just as a result of the scanning process, there's all these tiny little ones that you won't be able to see by eye, and we call those non-manifold geometry. So if we go to the mesh cleanup operation here, we're going to, instead of have clean up, we're going to select the polygons that match what we have here. Don't care about that for the moment. We're just going to do non-manifold geometry and hit clean up. And because we had select rather than clean up chosen, you see all these yellow spots on the mesh. That is going to be, they're all things that are going to be a real problem if we try to retopologize. So we're just going to, it's automatically selected them for us. We're just going to hit delete on those. And they're gone. Now what we want to do is get rid of these bits that are connected all up, but they're just separate to the main mesh. The easiest way to do that is to select the whole shell. Shell means all the faces that are all together connected, and to do that all you need to do is double click on a face and it will select all the faces in the same shell as that face. And it will take a second to do that. I think it's selected them all. It's hard to tell because it's so dense. And then what we're going to do is invert the selection. So select anything that isn't part of the main shell by holding Shift on the keyboard and dragging a box select around our selection. And that will select everything that isn't from that previous selection. It's chugging a bit. Okay, so I've inverted that selection just by doing what I said. I had to do it again because the computer was being really slow. And of course the computers we're working on in the classroom are not as good as mine, so I'll get you to laser scan yours at a lower resolution than I have for this, just because the computers won't handle it. So I'm going to just, because it's inverted the selection, it's not selected the main part and it's got these extra bits selected, and I'm going to hit delete on those. Okay, they're gone now. And back to object mode. It should be faster in object mode, yep. And here, now I'm going to save this out, export my selection as an OBJ, and I'm going to save it to desktop. I'm just going to call it gnarly 1. And again, have to wait a bit for this. You know me, I've got a cup of tea next to me. Gonna take a sip while I'm waiting. There we go, so it should have finished now. I'm just going to minimize that. Well, actually I'm going to open ZBrush. And ZBrush is a really weird software. It's really obscure the way it arranges things, and it's a little bit hard to understand. I'm not an expert at ZBrush. I'm also learning it myself. So I'm just will be moving between Maya and ZBrush, but everything I am doing here can be done in ZBrush. I just don't know how to do it all yet. But this is the flow that I've kind of figured out for me for how to do this. So when you open ZBrush, the important thing to know is this thing called tools. Tools don't refer to actions that you perform on an object, so it's a bit confusing. They actually refer to, in ZBrush, the objects that you're working on. So what you need to do is import your first tool by going to the import button and then selecting the OBJ. You just export it from Maya. And what happens is once you import a tool, this, you see how it says draw here? You need to draw it on your canvas. And what's confusing is if you try and sort of move your camera around this or anything, you find it won't work. It'll just sort of draw more of them, and that's kind of confusing because this is not a this is kind of like sort of like the object mode, but it's a bit different. To clear the canvas in draw mode, just press Ctrl N to get rid of things. What you actually have to do is draw one object like that, and straight away before you click on anything else you have to go into edit. And now once you're in edit mode and you click somewhere that's not the object, you can rotate it and move around it. To zoom in you have to hold Alt, right click and then release Alt to do that. Okay. Now you can see that what ZBrush sort of does is transform it into its own kind of clay modeling system. This is not actually a 3D view, I have learned. It's actually a system called 2.5D, and don't ask me how it works. I don't know how it works, but you can have massive, really complicated layers of detail and still sculpt it like it was just like clay, which is really amazing. So you can kind of you can create many different subdivision sort of layers, different layers of detail, and work on those like you do in Mudbox. What you see in my Unity version is I've got kind of like teeth on it. I've created some extra bumps in the mesh. I've retopologized it a bit. I've gone and fixed it up. The tools to do that are when you're working on your edit mode on your object are up here. The brushes refer to like you can, if you start drawing on your model, you can build up the surface with your kind of clay brushes. We can choose a standard brush to just kind of bulge it or inflate it like this. You can also choose brushes that where are we? Let's see if we can find one that removes surface. Maybe there's carve. Anyway, there's a whole bunch here. Just you can play around with those. The one I want to use here is smooth, actually. Smooth, which is a secondary one, and if you hold Shift while drawing your brush, it will smooth the surface, and I want to smooth that tongue out so that when I create the normal map it doesn't have all these bumps in it. Just going to pause the video for a second. What I did when I originally made this model before was I used these sculpting tools on the teeth area to make them look more like this, so that the teeth were more standing out. So I pushed back some areas of the teeth and built others up to make them more clear forms, because when the scanner scanned the object it couldn't quite reach this area, and it kind of had to make it up. So I went back in and fixed that up. So like if you use these tools to just build up areas of your mesh, you can always export that high resolution version like I've done here and brought it back into Maya to doing my normal mapping work later. And that's fine for the high resolution one. You may need to reduce the number of faces a bit, and I'll show you how to do that in a second, because it will still be difficult for Maya to work with. But you must also create your low resolution version so that you can do your transfer mapping, and we'll do that now. So one of the most powerful things about ZBrush is its Dynamesh and retopologizing tools. So here you've got, where are we? Where's it gone? In geometry, click on geometry, you've got Dynamesh. Dynamesh sort of creates a shell around the whole thing to make it automatically an enclosed object, and you can set the layer of detail of that. So if we wanted to create a low resolution Dynamesh, we could just click that now, and you'll see that it's automatically created a kind of a really well kind of it's done a good job of organizing the faces so that they're evenly spread around the whole object, and it's still keeping the same silhouette. Maya just doesn't do that as well. It's also connected these two spots here. I don't actually want it to do that. And you can have multiple kind of layers of detail using that Dynamesh tool. You can also make a higher resolution version of it if you want to add much more high detail to it. So you could do more of something like this, and it doesn't look any different because it's already really high detail, but you can work on it like that. I'm not going to do the Dynamesh. Oh no, I will. I'll make the Dynamesh just in case there was an area of topology that wasn't kind of part of an outer shell, just in case there was anything left over. So I've hit that there. And now what I want to do is make my lower resolution versions of that. So if we go to Z Remesher, this is really powerful. We're going to, what I usually do, I might just go down to like 2 and hit Z Remesh, and it'll take a little bit to do it, so I'm just going to pause the video if I can get out of this. It seems to be doing okay. I reckon this is going to make the Macs in our lab really chug, so yeah, we'll have to scan them at a lower res. Okay, and you see that it's done a really good job of making a much cleaner version of that mesh with a much lower polygon count. And what you want to do there, you can export that into Maya if you want. But I think what you... Actually, yeah, so export a version of this now so that you have it. I'm going to call it gnarly low. The reason I've exported that now is so that it bakes it out as a complete OBJ in case there's any sort of other layers of detail in the data that I don't want anymore. So I'm going to clear the canvas by getting out of edit mode and going like that. I'm going to import the one I just saved out as an object, and then go back into edit. And the other thing you can do in ZBrush is use the UV Master plugin to do the UV mapping for you. And I'm just going to do that now. So I've got UV Master open. And of course, when you try to automatic map in Maya, you can get really messy results. And it's not a very intuitive way of working. It takes forever. This is much quicker and much more powerful. What you're going to do is click Enable Control Painting. And you've got two buttons here, Protect and Attract. He attract, he protect. So if you click Protect, you can draw on the mesh where you do not want the UV mapping seams to appear. So if you've got this area of a focus on your model and you don't want the computer to put a seam there, you can draw red on it and the computer will try and go around it. So there's just an example. You might want to put it on these kind of surfaces too. Anyway, it's just an example. And then you can go back into the plugin and you can go Attract and say, I want seams to be in these places because they're less visible. And then once you've decided that, or you can also go Attract from Ambient Occlusion, which will automatically calculate which areas are less exposed to light and put seams there. Once you're happy with what you've painted, you just go Unwrap, and that takes a little bit of time. It usually takes mine a long time, so I'm just going to wait. I don't know if I can pause the video. Let's see. There's my software. Yep. Okay, I've had a lot of trouble getting that to work, so what I'm just going to do is take this lower resolution model and export it to Maya, and I'll just do an automatic map there for today. So actually I already have this ready to go. I'll just show you how I imported that again. I just went to import, here it is, and what I did was I went to UV and I just did an automatic map here with fewer pieces and 6 planes, and I just did a project. And then if you go to UV editor, you'll see that it has all the pieces there, and that's I think, in here you can also go, where is it? Tools, optimize. One second. Okay, I think I've actually discovered why this wasn't unwrapping in ZBrush, because when I went to go to Tools, Modify, Optimize, it told me I still have non-manifold geometry. And I'm going to just say fix it. So I must have still had some non-manifold stuff there. Anyway, we've got a UV map ready. I'm just going to see if that, I'm just going to pause it for a second and see if that's fixed it for unwrapping in ZBrush. I don't know if that worked. I've got it running in the background to see if it's fixed it, but it doesn't really matter. We can still do our normal map baking here. If you need a lower resolution version of this even more, you can of course use Maya's reduce tool here, now that there's less information for it to deal with. That's the reduce function here. You can set a vertex limit. I had it really low for my project because I needed it to function as cloth. So that's why it says that, oops. That's why I've got it at 2000. If you've got preserve quads, that will try to keep the four-sided faces, except that wasn't working for me before. I'll just see if it works this time, but no. It's making, oh it is, but I've made that way too low, so I'll try that again. It is working, which is good. Preserve quads, 2000 is too low, we'll go up to 6000. Sharpness will tell the reduce tool to try and preserve detail in certain areas. Otherwise it will kind of smooth it out too much, and you can see if you don't preserve detail, you get sort of more shapes like that. That's actually one from ZBrush, but it won't preserve as much kind of hard edge detail. Oops. So let's try that. Yeah, that's a lower version. So we can use that one and see how it's got these lines closer together. That's where it's tried to preserve sharpness. There's not much point in preserving the quads though, because Unity will convert it to triangles anyway. So if you go, so I'm just going to do it without the quads. Mesh, reduce, preserve quads, no. And here is, well, that's weird. Doesn't look right to me. I'm just going to delete the history. Mesh, reduce. I'll try 4000. There's some weird stuff happening here. What's going on? Oh dear. Okay, I just had to re-import the file again, and then I ran a reduce on it. I'll just undo. That was me re-importing the file, and then I went mesh, reduce, preserve quads, no. And then it did something funny with the material, so I have just given it a new, assign new material, blin. Okay. Now, of course, you'll want to transfer the maps, from the high resolution to the low resolution. Let's just, get that one out of the way. We want to transfer the lighting detail from this one to this one. And what you've got to do is you have to smooth the mesh before that will work properly in Unity. So, to transfer maps, the easiest way to show you to do this, and I've done this in another video, but I'll do it again here. The easiest way to represent that is to put them on top of each other. We're going to assign this a new material, which is, I'm going to give that a blin as well. They've both got their own blin material. I am going to It's too difficult when they're on top of each other. What I need to do is make sure I save this out first, because I'm going to need to smooth it, which will add more detail into the object that Unity can't use. So I'm going to export the selection as an OBJ, export selection to the desktop. I'm going to call it gnarly final. So that's the final UV mapped model that's going to go into Unity for now. But now we're going to make the normal map texture for it. But to do that we have to smooth it. So you have to go to Mesh, Smooth. Otherwise the triangles will appear in the normal map and you don't want to do that. So Smooth. And it will look kind of cool. But remember that Unity can't do this smoothing. So that's why we've exported a more jagged version of it first. This is just for the transfer mapping to work. We need to go to rendering. No, not rendering. Is it FX? Why have I forgotten where this is? Modeling, ringing, animation. It's in. Come on. I'm sure it's in FX. Oh god. No, it is in rendering. It's in lighting, shading, transfer maps. Bring transfer maps up. Now, of course, I'll explain what a normal map is in class. I've done it in another video, but we're just going to do this again. We're going to save we're going to call the normal map file the gnarly normal. We're going to, the target mesh is the low resolution one and the source mesh is the high resolution one. We're going to display both. We want to do this, that's tangent space. Advanced options, closest to envelope, transfer in object space. That means they don't need to be on top of each other for it to work. If it doesn't work, I'll put them on top of each other. Map, yep, let's try that. Bake, and that may take a while, so I'm going to pause it. And of course that hasn't worked, so I'm going to try it this way. Should be fine. I'm going to go back to world space. Oh wait, source mesh. Hypergraph. Hierarchy. Where's hypergraph? Yeah, that's the right one. What? Oh, it is already there. Okay. Let's try again. Bake. And that has been successful. That's worked. So you can see that the detail from the high resolution model has now been baked onto this one, and that detail of course isn't physically in that model, it's using the normal texture which is here. So all we need now is the gnarly final, which is the file I exported. That is, oh god, all these windows. Which is the non-smoothed version of this, and the normal map, which was baked using that transfer maps process. All that we need to do now is bring those two into Unity. So if we bring that into the scene, there it is there. If we turn on wireframe, you can see that that's the detail of the model. Let's put let's do both. And then we've got the we need to right click and create a material. I'm going to call it gnarly new. I'm going to put that onto the model. We're going to make it, let's make it just a green color, and in the normal map we need to put our normals there and go fix now. You can't really see that, and there you go, there you can see all of the detail has been added to the object, and it looks really good. And of course, if you went and textured it properly, which we can do in ZBrush as well, which I did this one in ZBrush. I'll do that in another video. You can get it looking great with all the different colors. This was the original project file where I was doing this for the first time, that I've brought up a couple of times. And this is when I really tried to reduce it a lot using the ZBrush remesh, but it gave a much, it doesn't look as good because I don't like how much detail it removed from the model by sort of smoothing it out. So that's why I actually originally brought it back into Maya, and I preserved the sharpness on it when I was reducing it to get more of a shape like that, and like what we've done today. So that's a mixture of the ZBrush reducing tools and the Maya reducing tools. Okay, I think that's, so you can watch this and work through it in class, and I will help people that have problems as we go. Alright, I'll finish up there.